close your eyes and let everything else fade. Because what you're about to hear is not a headline, not a rumor, not a political stunt. It's a story that's been buried beneath layers of silence, denials, and carefully scripted statements. A story that begins not in Washington, not in Tel Aviv, but in the dust-heavy winds blowing across the Gaza border at dawn. I'm Adrian Coldwell, and tonight we are going deep into the shadows behind one of the most explosive and controversial investigations of this war. A secret U.S. megabase planned, surveyed, and quietly prepared right at the edge of Gaza. A base capable of housing thousands of American troops. A base Israel's own military leadership claims they were never told about. A base that could rewrite power, sovereignty, and the future of the entire region. This is not speculation. This is not a drill. This is the story Washington didn't want public. This is the story Netanyahu never briefed his own commanders about. And this is the story that every intelligence service in the Middle East is scrambling to decipher right now. Breathe in, settle your mind, and listen, because this is going to shake you. Let's begin. The first whispers came from inside Kiryat Gat, a place normally associated with factories and faraway commuter trains, not covert military coordination centers. Yet in late October, American officers quietly arrived. Not one or two, not a small advisory team, 200, all wearing CENTCOM insignia, all assigned to a new building with a long, sterile name, the Civil Military Coordination Center. Outwardly, it looked harmless enough, a humanitarian hub, a communications facility, a place where Israel and the U.S. could coordinate on Gaza issues. That was the official story. But even then, even in those early hours, something didn't feel right, because this new CMCC didn't behave like a coordination office. It behaved like a headquarters. Satellite dishes went up. Encrypted comms traffic surged. Unmarked American personnel carriers arrived at night, and a classified logistics team was flown in directly from Al Udeid Air Base. Something much bigger was taking shape. Yet when Israeli commanders were asked about it, they shrugged. "We know almost nothing," one IDF source admitted. That was unusual, unprecedented even. The IDF is not kept in the dark on what happens inside Israel's borders, especially not on its most explosive border of all, the Gaza line, where one wrong signal can ignite a region-wide firestorm, and yet the Americans were building something no one understood, until last week, when a leak changed everything. A single document, 3 paragraphs, and a number that sent shockwaves through every intelligence desk between Beirut, Cairo, Tel Aviv, and Washington. Capacity, 3,000 to 4,000 personnel. That was the line. A U.S. installation inside Israel, able to host thousands of American soldiers. Not advisors, not diplomats, combat-capable personnel. A footprint of that size is not a coordination center. It is a base, a fortress, a multi-purpose military platform that could become a command center, a staging ground, a launching point, a stabilizing force, or an occupying one. It depends who you ask. Israel's political elite, silent, America's Pentagon. No comment, but Israeli sources told the investigative team at Shamrim something that few could believe. The U.S. was surveying land. The U.S. had delivered preliminary budgets. The U.S. had begun quietly shaping the perimeter plan, and the expected cost was $500 million. $500 million. You don't spend $500 million to coordinate humanitarian aid. You spend that kind of money when you're about to change the balance of power in a region, completely. Now, listen carefully, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. Even inside Israel, even inside the ranks of the IDF, no one seems to know who approved it. Some officers believe Washington is acting independently. Some believe Netanyahu already agreed privately and kept his own military in the dark. If that's true, this could be one of the most controversial political decisions in modern Israeli history. If it isn't true, then who is actually pulling the strings here? Let's go deeper. Imagine the Gaza border as it looks at dusk, heavy silence, watchtowers, the faint hum of drones above, tracks in the sand from armored vehicles that have passed through. Now imagine Far behind that horizon, engineers marking out new boundaries in the dirt. American engineers, one grid here, one command hub foundation there. Underground fiber ducts plotted like veins across a battlefield heart. And then imagine this: a sprawling, self-contained U.S. base capable of operating independently from Israel. Separate intelligence streams, separate logistic routes, separate rules of engagement, a base large enough to host a brigade, a base strong enough to intervene, if Washington decides to intervene. Think about the implications, because the moment that base becomes real, three things happen instantly. 1, Israel no longer has full control over the Gaza envelope. 2, Washington gains the ability to act over Israel's objections. 3, every actor in the region, from Hamas to Hezbollah to Iran, rewrites its strategy overnight. This isn't just a base, this is leverage. It's a new pressure point inserted directly into the Middle East's most combustible border. And all of this is happening while the public narrative insists the U.S. has no plans for expansion. Someone is lying. Someone is hiding something. Let's uncover what. Flashback audio begins. Wind, gunfire in the distance, voices muffled by static. A soldier whispers, "Adrian, you need to understand the Americans aren't here to observe. They're here to control." The recording continues. "You didn't hear this from me, but they're mapping evacuation routes. Something big is being prepared." End of flashback. Let's talk about that for a moment. Evacuation routes. That phrase should make any analyst pause. Evacuation routes mean anticipation of conflict spillover. Evacuation routes mean Americans moving toward the front, not away from it. Evacuation routes mean the U.S. intends to keep boots on the ground long enough that extraction plans are essential. That's not advisory presence, that's operational presence. And then there's this. Washington already deployed a THAAD missile system inside Israel earlier this year. It wasn't dismantled. Its radar continues to sweep skies far beyond Gaza. Layer by layer, the American military footprint is expanding across Israeli territory, and this new base, this $500 million fortress, is the largest piece yet. But to understand the why, you have to see the broader picture. Let's pull back. Washington is exhausted by this conflict. Americans are tired. Budgets are tight. Support for foreign deployments is collapsing. So why now, at the height of domestic fatigue, would the U.S. expand its military presence? Why pour billions into Gaza stabilization? Why risk political backlash in an election year? The answer is uncomfortable, because Gaza is no longer just Israel's problem. It's the new global flashpoint pulling every major power into its orbit. Russia is watching, Iran is watching, China is watching, the Gulf states are watching. And Washington has realized something. Israel is losing its ability to control the Gaza situation alone. Humanitarian bottlenecks, aid blockages, international criticism. Tensions with Egypt, tensions with Europe, tensions with Hamas over hostage negotiations. America wants order. America wants influence. America wants full visibility. And the fastest path to all three is to build a base directly on the border. But there's a darker angle, because some insiders believe the U.S. expects another Gaza war within 2 years. Not an insurgency, not a skirmish, a full-scale breakdown, possibly involving Iran-backed militias, possibly involving spillovers from Lebanon, possibly involving factions that have not yet revealed themselves. If that scenario is even partially true, a massive U.S. base becomes not an option, it becomes a necessity. And Israel may not have had a choice, but here's where it gets even stranger. While American planners were outlining this base inside Israel, the IDF was reportedly blindsided. How? Let's dive into that angle. Inside Israel's military, there is one phrase that circulates quietly among senior officers when something feels off. Shadow agreement. It means a deal made at the political level without briefing the military. A handshake hidden behind diplomatic curtains. And according to multiple analysts, Netanyahu may have done exactly that. He may have quietly approved the U.S. base to secure American political protection while keeping the IDF in the dark to avoid internal backlash. Is that proven? Number Is it plausible? Absolutely. Netanyahu has bypassed military leadership before on sensitive deals, prisoner exchanges, and diplomatic maneuvers. But this is different. This involves sovereignty. Foreign boots on Israeli soil, foreign command structures, foreign authority over humanitarian corridors, and most explosive of all, a foreign military power controlling the Gaza border. If Netanyahu agreed to this alone, it could ignite a political firestorm inside Israel. If he didn't agree, then the Americans may be acting in a completely new paradigm, one where Washington does not wait for Israel's permission. Both scenarios are alarming, but let's go deeper, because this isn't just about politics. This is about strategy. And the strategy speaks loudly. If the U.S. builds this base, 3 immediate outcomes reshape the region. Outcome 1. Israel's autonomy in Gaza collapses. The U.S. will control aid distribution. The U.S. will coordinate ceasefire enforcement. The U.S. will authorize or deny certain operations. Israel becomes a secondary actor in its own border zone. Outcome 2. Hamas loses its negotiating leverage. If U.S. forces are on the border, they become the new central authority for humanitarian access, cutting Hamas off from one of its key bargaining tools. Outcome 3. A message is sent to Iran. A massive permanent U.S. presence directly facing Gaza would be interpreted in Tehran as escalation, not symbolic, not diplomatic, military escalation. And outcome 4, the one few want to speak about. The U.S. may be preparing for the possibility of administering Gaza in the medium term, not colonizing it, not occupying it, but stabilizing it through a multinational force centered around American command. If that sounds impossible, ask yourself why the U.S. would need a base big enough for thousands of soldiers in a place where it currently keeps just 200. Ask yourself why Washington is suddenly willing to pour $500 million into a single installation. Ask yourself why American engineers are surveying land the IDF claims it never authorized. This is not small. This is not temporary. This is a pivot. Let's examine how this news is being received inside Israel. Whispers in military circles describe it as the most dramatic external intervention since 1967. Pro-government voices claim the base would help stabilize Gaza. Opposition politicians fear Israel is surrendering control. IDF officers privately admit they're confused. One senior officer, speaking under anonymity, told investigators, "We were not briefed. We do not know the timeline. We do not know the scope. Decisions are being made outside the defense establishment that should terrify anyone who understands Israeli military doctrine. Civilian leadership does not keep the IDF in the dark on matters of national security. Not like this. Not ever. Unless the decision is so politically explosive that revealing it would shatter the ruling coalition, or unless Israel was pressured, heavily pressured, by Washington to accept terms it did not want to accept." Now, let's go even deeper, because the U.S. isn't just planning the base, it's already shifting the operational landscape, and I'm going to prove that to you. 3 weeks ago, the CMCC in Kiryat Gat quietly took control of almost all humanitarian aid flows into Gaza. Israel's COGAT, the agency that has managed Gaza coordination for decades, was sidelined overnight. Think about that. The U.S. is now controlling aid distribution, humanitarian corridors, operational approvals. Ground coordination all from inside Israel. Combine that with a massive base, and you no longer have cooperation. You have American command authority. This is a slow transfer of power, a transition, one that Israel may not have seen coming, one that Washington may have planned months earlier, one that could reshape every operation in Gaza for the next decade. But we're not done, because while the U.S. pushes in, the region is reacting, and the reactions are loud. Inside Gaza, Hamas interprets this as preparation for American occupation. Iranian media is calling it the first phase of foreign military guardianship. Egypt is deeply nervous because American troops on the Gaza border change Cairo's security calculus overnight. European officials are quietly relieved. because they believe only the US can enforce a long-term ceasefire. And Russia? Russia is furious because a permanent US base at Gaza blocks Moscow's expanding Middle East influence, especially through its Arab partners. This becomes a geopolitical earthquake, and somewhere inside this earthquake, a truth hides. Let me play you one more recording. A US official, voice altered by the whistleblower, speaking about the base's purpose. It's not about today, it's about what's coming in 2027, 2028. Gaza won't stabilize itself. Someone will have to hold the line. Listen to the last sentence. Someone will have to hold the line. Someone, not Israel, not the UN, not regional forces, but the United States. If that doesn't concern you, you're not paying attention. Let's widen the view further, because this story is not ending here. What we're looking at is the architecture of a new Middle East order, one where Washington is no longer the distant overseer, but the on-site supervisor, the enforcer, the stabilizer, the controller of aid, logistics, and border operations, and maybe later, more. Here's the truth most analysts won't say out loud. A U.S. base on the Gaza border is not about Gaza. It's about the future of American projection power in the Middle East. This base could support operations in the Sinai monitoring of Iran's proxy networks, early warning radar against missile launches, humanitarian brokerage power military stabilization across conflict zones. This is not a Gaza installation. This is a regional installation, strategic, deliberate, long-term, and maybe irreversible. So now, the question that matters most: why was all this hidden, and what happens next? Let's close with clarity. Tonight, you learned something the world was never supposed to hear in this level of detail. The U.S. is preparing a mega base on the Gaza border. It may hold thousands of troops. It may shift control away from Israel. It may shape the next decade of Middle East conflict. It may redefine American military presence. And right now, as you listen to this, powerful people are scrambling to contain the leak. They can't, because you know. And once a truth like this escapes into the air, it stays. Even if they deny it, even if they bury it, even if they call it misinterpreted, even if they label it premature. The foundations have already been marked, the surveys already done, the planning already underway, and I promise you this, we're not done exposing it. I'm Adrian Coldwell. This is the front line no one wanted to talk about, and I'll be back with more. Stay awake, stay aware, and keep your eyes closed until the truth opens them for you.